Beyond the Clef is presented by Director's Choice.
Welcome to Beyond the Clef, going further with your music program. I'm your host, David Beal, and I'm joined by our guest today, which is Edie Cooksey. How are you doing, Edie?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. So, Edie is the choir director at Madison High School in San Antonio, Texas. Now, we're recording right now in about the middle of June, and so Edie, for me right now, where I'm at, it's pretty hot. Is it really hot there?
It's really hot here. Probably more humid than where you're at.
Very much so, and I'm glad for that. But it is nice to be inside and take this time in the summer to have a cool music ed chat. And so we were talking right beforehand about what you do in your program, and you had mentioned to me that you have been teaching for how many years now?
23 years. Just finished my 23rd year.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. And how many years have you been at Madison?
This was my 17th year at Madison.
Oh, great. So you have a good longevity time there. Well, now tell me, you were talking about how your approach has changed over the last 20 years or so in your choir directing. So tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that.
Well, I think it's in my approach to children in specific. I think we all stand around and we talk a lot about how students have changed over the years and how parents are parenting differently. And so I think the way we approach children and we approach teaching children has to change with that. I see a lot of my colleagues being very staid in the way that they've done things and just complaining about how kids aren't the same instead of trying to change and reach the kids differently.
Yeah, and I've actually experienced this just recently. I'm now going into my ninth year of teaching, so I'm not that experienced into it, but I'm starting to catch myself saying, man, it's just that kids are different these days, and it's only been a short
Yes.
amount of time that I've been teaching. And so, talk to me about your approach and where your approach was, and then what you've changed to now.
Well, I think when I started out, I was very concerned about building a program and building a reputation, especially in the state of Texas.
Sure.
I think that seems to be the driving force for a lot of music educators because we have such pronounced music programs in the state of Texas. You want to be recognized for your work, and you want to do good work. And so I think that was, as a young director, that was a big push in my career, was making my choirs great because I wanted to be recognized and given some, I guess, kudos for the work I had done. I wanted to be respected amongst my peers. And I had the fortune of teaching amongst some very fine choral directors who are now just retiring. And so I wanted to be a part of that. I wanted to play with the big dogs and be respected for what I knew and what I could do. And I find that sometimes then to achieve those things, you have really high expectations of kids, which, don't get me wrong, I don't think your expectations should ever change. But I do think the way that we measure our kids' progress and we approach our kids has changed drastically. And I think we have to be a little more elastic in the way that we deal with kids. And I find that a lot of directors in my age bracket or with my experience are still very rigid and not willing to bend a little bit to help a kid out now and then.
Yeah, I find that
Because
in my teaching right now, and I'm going to steal this from my assistant AJ Pisani. What he was saying is this summer when we were talking about things, music hasn't changed. I mean, music has changed, but the core of the music theory and how to play an instrument hasn't changed. Every now and then, someone has a good idea or a good technique, and I'm sure it's the same in choir. There are some new ways that we go about those things, but music is still there. Our expectations of what they should know. A B flat scale is the same as it was for the last how many ever history. It's just physics at some point. So
exactly.
we have to figure out how to make it applicable to the students, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think it's got to do a lot with some of the other things we do. Our practice rehearsal techniques our expectations on attendance at concerts, our expectation on some other things. I just find that the older I get and the more students I teach and they change, they're so overcommitted nowadays that I find I don't look at them and say, this is your priority. I ask them to make me one of their priorities. It used to be you joined choir or you joined band and that was your thing. And now they have 5 or 6 things. And
Yeah,
so
I find that
can,
especially true I feel like that's always true, but especially true in some of the 4A and 5A schools that I've taught at, because there's such a small core group of students that are doing everything. And then in my program right now, we've expanded from old 4A to now 6A, and it still has that small town feel, but it's such a huge school, and everybody's doing everything. We're sharing everybody, but we can't grow from there. And it
right.
seems like even in my middle school right now, the kids go home and they have soccer and they have baseball and they have church and they have so many priorities. So at some point, it's hard to just be a kid.
It is. And I think part of my wisdom, if you want to call it that, comes from raising kids, and mine are now sophomore and a senior in high school. So I've seen the struggles they have daily
Sure.
in trying to balance their lives and their activities. And so I come back into the classroom with a new respect for what those kids are trying to balance and be a part of. I think we have to be very careful in expecting, if you want to be the number one priority and you're going to force students to choose, you're going to lose.
Yes.
And that's my concern for music education overall. If we start to force kids to choose, then we're going to lose and hurt ourselves.
That's a good message. So now let's get in more into the nuts and bolts of things. Like, for instance, you said like how you've thought about concert attendance and those major things. So talk a little bit more specifically about stuff like that.
Well, I truly believe that you should be on time, and if you're on time, you're late, and early is on time, and I've heard all these catchphrases, and that's true. However, I think we preach that to kids and we hold them accountable to that, but then we don't give them any grace for the fact that life happens, and, you know, traffic happens for them, and a train happens for them, and so I don't know that there's a lot of grace given to the humanality of it all. We like to make rules. Teachers like rules. Black, white, yes, no, 0, 100. We like all those parameters, and I think sometimes it gets to be a struggle for us winning, follow my rules, versus helping them win, helping them manage life. And I think that's really more of our job nowadays than it used to be, is helping them manage their life.
And that's
Music
so much of what we have to do.
that gets us there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Music's the gimmick that gets them in our classroom. But I don't know that that's, our entire sole purpose.
And that resonates so much with everybody that I've been talking to is what we're doing here is so much more important than the music, and I think that's what a lot of music educators, whether they really realize that or not, that's what we're really in it for. That's why we're all into it, because what music does for you as a person, and we all know that. I'm preaching to the choir directors here, literally. But we have to show that that's what we're really doing to the kids and to our parents. So how do you try to impart your priorities or this onto your students and onto your parents in your program?
I think high achievement always motivates a program. If you've got a good program, the parents believe in that and they understand it takes hard work to get there. Mm-hmm. I think you've got to have some buy-in from the beginning. A long time ago, I got rid of the officer structure in the choir department. We don't have a president. We don't have a vice president. We have team leaders. It's kind of like there's a new business management style. Same thing with churches nowadays. It's a difference in the organization, trying to get more people involved in the leadership of the organization. So we have a team leader, but that team leader is in charge of getting a team to help him out. So the more buy-in you have from your students, then I think the more committed they become to something because they're a part of it. It's their organization. And I think that's sometimes we have a hard time letting go of the reins. They're not going, for example, go do this project for me, students, and they come back and they didn't do it the way you wanted them to, so it's easier to do it yourself. No, we have to let them have buy-in. We have to let them do it their way. We can guide them along the way, but if you're doing everything because you want it done your way, it's your program, it's not their program.
And that resonates so much with what they're going to be doing in the future. I feel like now talking with some family members and friends that are not in the music world, that's the corporate America now, are teams of people that can accomplish a goal and accomplish a project and then split up and join a new team. And so it's not always that you have the president of this software development group and the treasurer and the whatnot. Sometimes it's a group of people that just have to function. And if in our organizations, if we do it all ourselves, I think what you're saying is that they're not learning how to be independent as a group. And then that's the buy-in that you're talking about.
Exactly. A phrase that I ran across a year ago that resonates with me that I have on the wall of my office is, it's not about us winning. It's about us helping them win.
I love that. I'm writing that down. So talk more about that.
That's kind of been my new philosophy. You know, as I started out as a teacher and it was all about me and building my program and making everything great, it's now about me helping the students build their program so that they can find ownership in it and making them great and helping them win.
Well, that is a really fascinating philosophy as we go forth and transition over. And so how do you, let's say there's somebody, for instance, like me, that are about, I'm past I'm a new teacher phase, and now I'm beginning to be an experienced teacher phase. How do I take my transition right now and my, let's call it the director-centered approach, and transition more into the organization-centered approach? How did that work for you?
Letting them do more. I was kind of forced into it, honestly, because I got into a situation where I needed help and there wasn't enough adults around to help. And so I started using the students more and depending on them more to lead rehearsals or lead a warm-up or whatever their strengths were, and trying to find something where they could help out. And I realized by accident what I had done and saw that it was enriching my program. Mm. And so I think you have to spread the wealth of the planning and the articulation of the rehearsals and have them have some say. It's not always director-led, and it's very difficult, especially for people who like to be in control and who like everything a certain way.
That would be me.
And me too. I think there's a lot of us musicians out there that's what makes us fine musicians, is we pay attention to detail, and we like to be in control of that. So it's very difficult. But I think if we continue to try to control everything, we choke the kids out, and we'll have a great program, but it'll just be us.
Sure. Well, and I was one thing I noted that there's so many times when we don't have the staff that we need, and we have to use just the staff that we have. And in my situation, I've grown and flexed quite a bit in my my school's only existed for 6 years. And in that time, we had a redistricting, and so I've gotten very large and whatnot. But at the same time, the choir director at my school has only been one choir director. Now she has staff that comes in and help. And so for a lot of times when we need that extra staff member, maybe the approach is not trying to sometimes always hire out or try to put more of the weight on the shoulders of the kids. Because when I find, for instance, you mentioned the warm-up or your fundamental exercises, when I find even in my beginner 6th grade class, when I do that, all of a sudden the kids learn so much more about why we're doing these things. It's not just to physically do this thing and kind of go through the motions, and then they transfer that into their own practice and their own musicianship, and they understand why we're doing these things.
Right, and they get an insight as to what it's like to be you,
Mm-hmm.
and then they understand what you're going through and what you're trying to achieve at the same time. And I think you create partners then, and you have partners in your goal to get everybody on board, whatever project you're working on. So I think the difficult part is handing those duties out, and you've got to watch them fail. You have to watch the kids fail. And instead you're thinking, oh, I'm wasting this rehearsal time, and oh, I could be doing this. This could be done so much more efficiently and so much. But in the end, you're training them to work on their own, which no one's really ever done.
Yes, I find that frustrating. This year we were working on ensembles, and then the kids are so scared about doing something and going out there, and I say to them, what in your life so far, and I don't know the answer to this question, what in your life so far has made you so scared to fail? You have to go out and you have to play wrong notes. You have to make a squeak and make a crack, and you have to go out and experience these things because you learn from them. And so when we were doing these ensembles, we had some groups that really excelled and they did great, and then some groups that really did not, and they were thinking that I was going to give them a pass and not perform, and I still made them perform in front of everybody, because what happened then is they realized, oh, I should have been doing this, or I could have done this. And so now the members of the group, the next time they do this, oh, I really have to go. So it's all about, I mean, failure is a huge part of what you need to do as a person.
Yes.
So
we tell them to sing loud, wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong notes are loud. We get them out there. I can't fix them if I can't hear them.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I saw a poster. I was in a classroom today, and I saw a poster today that says, on the road to success, you'll pass failure. You have to fail to succeed.
Yes.
And somewhere they're just afraid to do anything wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, let's go back to another thing you said at the beginning of the conversation was our kids are so overcommitted. So how do you manage that in your program? How do you manage the kids that are, like, for instance, I had a child this year that was an oboe player. They were in student council, they were a twirler. Yes, we still have twirlers in Lubbock. And they were a theater member. They were in track and at multiple athletics. And so how do you manage those kids that are in so many things but are maybe one of your top kids as well?
Well, I try to share them as much as possible. I really, coaches are not going to be real flexible, but you have to try. You have to go talk to the coach. And I expect the kids to talk to the coaches as well, both of us, and try to find, can I have this kid the first half of rehearsal, you can have him the last half.
Sure.
I have many band members in my varsity choir. They're varsity football players. They miss rehearsals. Okay, I'll allow you to miss that rehearsal, but you must make up that time with me. Where many directors are just going to say, no, you can't miss that rehearsal, or you're going to miss that rehearsal and get a 0, or you're going to miss that rehearsal, or you're going to miss 3 rehearsals and I'm going to remove you from the ensemble. I still want the kid. I still want to teach the kid. If I can, let's find an alternate way that I can change what I do to make it work for you. Do I say cater to every child? No, we can't do that. And when I talk about these things, sometimes I get a lot of backlash from the people that say, well, they're not going to tell me how to run my program. No, they're not. But if you continue to say, you can't go do all those other things, you must be here, again, I think if you make them make a choice, you're going to lose more than you're going to win. So I think we have to work with other organizations. If you miss a concert, usually that's a 0. You fail the 6 weeks. Now, I really want to know why. Where were you? Your grandmother's funeral, of course we'll excuse that.
Right.
But some kids are so afraid now to even tell you what's going on because they just know they're going to fail. They're going to get a 0. They're going to fail. And so I think, again, it's a relationship with the kids. You want to be able to talk to them. The more you work with them, the more confident they're going to come to you and talk about their issues, their conflicts they have with your class. And I think the way you win is by being the one that helps them manage all that. Then in the end, if somebody else says, hey, you've got to choose, they're going to choose you because you worked with them and helped them along the way. At least that's what I'm hoping.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This is Edie Cooksey from Madison High School Choir. It was fantastic getting to talk with you today, and I can't wait to see you this summer. Are you going to your hometown? Are you going to the summer music conventions at the end of July?
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to see you there, and we hope to have you back on the program again soon. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you for the invitation. Have a great summer.
You too.
Bye-bye.